one and all. It is I, Professor Moptop, once again. As always, thank you 1.5 million times over each and every week to each and every one of you. This week, we're going to be talking about something that's a little bit unusual to even think about. We're talking about deep cuts in Beatle land. Now, it's hard to think of songs by the Beatles not really being extremely popular and extremely well known. Well, there's 3 songs that we're going to talk about this week that were all part of the Yellow Submarine soundtrack. When the Beatles, along with George Martin and Brian Epstein, decided that they were going to have a film that would be the Yellow Submarine film, the producers asked them if they had some new music to contribute. Well, this was primarily a obligation towards their contract, so their minimal interest in it resulted in them giving them music that they didn't think was the top of the line stuff. That being said, it's still the Beatles, and it's always a lot of fun. The first one up this week is called Only a Northern Song, and George wrote it in February of 1967 for the Sgt. Pepper album. After he recorded it, George Martin, along with the other Beatles, listened and said, maybe this isn't quite good enough to be on Sgt. Pepper. They were realizing that the album was going to be something special, and Only a Northern Song wasn't quite special enough. It was George Martin's job to have to tell George Harrison that you should probably go back to the drawing board and find something new for us. It's not only about Northern England, it's also about Northern Publishing, which is where the Beatles are from and who was making all the money. You'll hear the professor talk about how George sings to the listener, which is a little bit unusual for a song, and a whole bunch of the overdubs that they did, and there's a lot of them, and I'll tell you all about them in your weekly audio. Paul plays the trumpet, George plays the glockenspiel. It was also called Not Unknown at one point, which is just kind of a cool sound. A very, very different, yet a very, very similar song was All Together Now. It was recorded specifically for the Yellow Submarine film. It was recorded right after Sgt. Pepper was done, but before it came out to the public. It is very possible that this was one of the simple songs that they were trying to write to represent England when they were on the Our World Tonight broadcast, where they finally did All You Need Is Love. They wanted something simple and universal, and a kid song with nothing but one-syllable words, or primarily one-syllable words, would be a good fit. Ultimately, it was All You Need Is Love. I'm basically speculating. Paul wrote the first part, the simple 1, 2, 3, 4 part, and John came up with the skip the rope part. It was fun for John to be able to write a song that was a little bit fun, and he had gotten serious and strange and out there. It was kind of him starting his Get Back session, his Get Back period, where he would start talking about, he would start writing music that resembled what he grew up with. When they recorded the song, George Martin was absent. Paul McCartney was pretty much the unofficial producer to the song. There was a bunch of people around and a bunch of background singers singing All Together Now. And the third song you're going to get this week, you're going to get 2 parts of it, is a really good George psychedelic rocker called It's All Too Much, recorded in May of 1967. Again, in that period after Sgt. Pepper, but before the Magical Mystery Tour really got underway. They weren't sure what they were going to do with some of these songs. All Too Much became the obvious choice to donate to the Yellow Submarine project. It was recorded at the Delaney Studios in London. The Who and Jimi Hendrix and the Bee Gees all recorded there. So, of course, the Beatles had to get there, too. At the end, when they're singing Too Much, Too Much, Too Much, if you listen real closely, a couple times they're singing tuba, 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 and then they're also singing Cuba, Cuba, Cuba. Now, this song was actually 8 minutes long at one point. There's an extra verse to it with the line, time for me to look at you and you to look at me. That was ultimately edited out to make the song a little bit more reasonable. George wrote it while under the influence of LSD, so it has that trippy psychedelia to it, but it's also a love song in which he's singing about his wife Patty, and he uses some Indian philosophy as well as a little bit of nursery rhyme mentality to it. So it's a very well-written George Harrison song, even though, as I said, it would be considered a deep cut. At the beginning, the words he says is, to your mother. You gotta listen real close for that. He also sings of the girl with the long blonde hair and the eyes of blue, which is very, very likely his wife, Patty. You're going to hear a hunk of audio from the Murseys and a song called Sorrow, in which they sing something very, very similar. And even though it's a relatively upbeat and happy song, he also sings We Are Dead. You'll hear all about this in your hunks of audio this week. Please keep an eye out for your emails. Download your WeTransfers, and if you have any questions, comments, or general love to send, you could send them my way. Everybody have a good week. I am the Professor.